Just ahead on Black Issues Forum, with the upcoming local and national elections just days away, we're diving deep into the voices that will shape the future college students. We'll explore the issues that matter most to young voters, what motivates them, and the unique impact they have on our democracy, from policies on education and climate change to economic stability and social justice. We'll cover it all. Coming up next, stay with us.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting PBS NC.
Welcome to Black Issues Forum. I'm Kenia Thompson. It seems like every other conversation these days are all focused on November 5th. Local and national election decisions are more critical than ever before, and our young voter population are key players. Today's conversation is virtual, so we can accommodate our young rock stars in their busy school schedules, and I'm grateful to have them on, so let's go ahead and introduce them. With us, we have Robyn Magee, a third year student at the North Carolina Central University School of Law and currently serves as the president of the Student Bar Association. Also joining her from Central is Sara Artola. Sara is president of the Political Science Club at North Carolina Central University. She also serves as Miss Raíces 2024 to 2025 for the Raíces Latino Student Organization. And lastly, we have Aniya Arnold, former PBS North Carolina intern and current senior at Elon University, majoring in cinema and television arts.
Hi.
It's
Happy to
so
be
great
here.
to have you. Yeah, it is so great to have you. I know that you're all very busy, obviously, by your resume and the things that you're doing. You're always likely either studying or doing something on campus. So we really appreciate this conversation. And, I think it just denotes the fact that you guys realize that this is an important time. And I'd love to kind of go around, Robyn, and hear your thoughts about how this time feels for you and why your vote in particular matters. Sara, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think aside from the stuff that I do at school, I also have this internship and I'm a civic engagement intern. So my work really revolves around getting people to vote and how
Yeah.
people engage with local government specifically. So it
Mhm.
seems like in a way that was not true for at least me when I was a little bit younger in the last
Yeah.
election, it seems like there's more on the line. And that may just be every 4 years that it feels like there's so much more on the line. But working in these spaces, you realize that people might not know how to vote, or there's so many hurdles to voting, and it's pretty daunting sometimes.
Yeah. No, I understand. And you're right. Every 4 years, it feels like this is the time. It's critical. It's even more critical than last time. But maybe that just denotes where we're going as a society. I'm not sure. But Aniya, do you agree with Sara? And what are your thoughts around this election season this time around?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Sarah. I've used a lot of my film experience making like voter education videos and like
Mhm.
outreach in that way. And I just think like accessibility is so important when it comes to making sure people know just where to go, when to go, like things like that. It's just so key to have all that information. And I feel like Gen Z, we really like communicate like that is our specialty, like through video, like through sharing things on social media and stuff like that. So I
Mhm.
think there's just a stronger sense of empowerment now because we're able to actually like apply like those things that we've like all grown up around and like social media and like using that. Now it feels like there's a larger purpose. Like it
Mhm.
just feels so clear that there's a larger purpose, like um just using like social media as like a political tool is really cool, and I enjoy doing that, and I think it helps like other people just feel less alone and like learning the whole voting situation. Like we all are fairly new voters, like we've only voted, this might be our second election,
I was gonna
so
ask, yeah, is
yeah.
this is your second election, Sara, yours as well?
No, this is my first.
Your first, and
Yeah, let
Robyn,
me
this is your
count.
second.
This might be my first too. Yeah.
Might be your first two, yeah. Yeah, Robyn, is this your second?
No, I'm a little
This your
older,
first?
so this is my
Yeah.
third. This is
Third,
gonna be
third,
my third.
okay.
Yeah, my first one
Yeah.
was 2016.
Mhm.
And then just piggybacking off of these wonderful ladies, one, just to kind of see that the conversation is being had right now amongst people that are like actively going in through this process of voting. Like, Sarah, this is going to be your first time, Aniya, this is your second, but still at the end of the day, it's like we're still so very novel. And
Mhm.
I think you said it best, Anaya, about like the outlook of education and why that is very important. And for me, like that's where I am. Like then, I'm going into this law space when I graduate, my sole purpose is to advocate for people. Like that is literally the foundation of my job. And a part of that is going to come with, okay, what do you know that I'm advocating you for, right? Like,
Mhm.
what is it that you understanding about what does advocacy look like? What is your voice being shared and how is it being heard? And I think that's where I'm coming from with the importance of, this election and just voting in period is like not only exercising your right, not only being in the right spaces, but also understanding what your purpose is behind it. What does your
Yeah.
vote do? What are you voting for? Right? Because it's one thing to just say, I'm going to exercise my right to vote, and you have no idea what you're voting for. So I think all of those things kind of work in tandem about why I think that it's very important for me and why this space is very important for, our young leaders or just really generationally everyone, but specifically
Mhm.
for the folks that are, getting into this, this mindset of this is new for them. And this is, something that may not have been talked about enough, but now that we're having the conversation, it's starting to, be a trailblazer and now it's time to listen. So,
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think, a lot of times we kind of discount the young voice,
mm,
either due to we think there isn't enough experience, there, enough knowledge around issues. But we have found in the past several years, in the past multiple elections, that young voices have been very powerful, right?
yeah.
You guys don't really back down. It feels like I'm a older millennial, and I think we were afraid to speak up a lot in my generation,
Mm.
but that doesn't feel the same today. And so, Robyn, I'd love for you to start. What are some of the top issues that are concerning you that you feel like you have to speak out on?
Yeah, for me, higher education is something that is big. That is the area of law that I want to practice in. So when
Mhm.
it does come to, issues that relate specifically to folks that are in college, right? When you're thinking about abortion rights and when you're thinking about student loan debt and what that looks like. And people don't realize now that I'm actively about to start paying my loans back, I'm looking at it like, this is
Yeah,
a lot, you know what I mean?
it's
But
a
it's
lot.
very important to have that conversation. Those are probably the top bigger things. I think really on third place is our gun laws and what that looks like.
Mhm.
But more importantly, to recognize that state government has, and we're probably going to get a little bit into that. So I won't go too much into tandem, but our state government is very important as well.
Anaya, what are some of your top concerns?
Yeah, I would definitely say abortion rights are my top concern just because that also just encompasses like women's health. And so I am constantly concerned about that, constantly watching that. And then I think also to Robin's point, like like how like states are governed like on that local level, on that state level is so important, especially because of things like Roe v. Wade being rolled back and being
Mhm.
dependent on state decisions and like state government
Mhm.
decisions. It's just that like local government is something that just I had my eye on immediately after that happened, and it became something I really cared about. And
Yeah.
getting people involved on a local level is something that I really cared about, and still do. And I think also gun reform. I think being a student, like it's just always weighing on you. It doesn't matter where. It doesn't matter what grade you're in or like what school you go to. UNC had an incident where they're college students, but it's
Yeah.
like at the same time security is always feeling safe is always an issue, and I think that is solely dependent on our gun laws and how they need to change like
Oh,
swiftly. um
that's a great
and
point.
then yeah, I think also my third one, oh man, if I had to rank them, I would say probably access to education as well. I think
Mm.
especially like K through 12. I
Mhm.
have a younger cousin, and I'm just seeing how he's kind of going through such a different education system than I went through, and I think it's even changed, like, since I was in it, like, and so I'm really seeing those changes, and then just hearing all these sort of, like, threats about the education system really changing and people being, like, I don't know, just, like, reprimanded for
Mhm.
teaching history being changed in different ways. That's very concerning to me. And I think that directly informs, like, higher education, because when we, like, weed these resources out, who are we taking them from? And I think most of the time it's, like, low income Black youth who are being affected by these schools being divested in, essentially. So I think those are my 3. My 3
Mm,
Mhm.
great
right
points.
now.
Sarah,
It
what are your
seems
thoughts,
like
Sarah?
there's a lot of overlap here, and great minds think alike, so I'm not
Yeah.
surprised. But I think for me, the first thing, if I had to rank them, would be immigration, and not just the policies that come out of that, but also the way that people talk about it, because it's just as important. Because today, immigration is about people who look like me, but it's not always going to be like that, and it hasn't always been like that. And we know that history tends to repeat itself. So I think that it's very crucial to pay attention to not only the way, are these policies that are trying to be enacted, are they sustainable, are they humane, which is a crazy question to have to ask, but it's very serious. Are these policies humane? Will they benefit? Who do they benefit? And are we being careful about the language that we used when we're talking about people like this? Because at the end of the day, it is people, and these are
Mhm.
lives that are at stake. Um, and I personally am affected by that, and it pervades every area of my life. I'm also a first generation student. My family had just not had access to these different resources that I do today. So it's always been, and it's probably always going to be like top thing for me. I think really close by it though is education, and like some of the other girls said, um, I am the eldest, and I have 3 younger siblings, and they are beautiful, bright children. And then when I hear about the way that adults are talking about education, it's very perplexing, and it's very upsetting, because the point of school, the point of education is to prepare the people of tomorrow. And it's so important. And they're talking about it like it's not important. And they're purposely censoring things out. And I think that's the right word to use,
Mhm.
because it's not about who's uncomfortable when we're teaching these things. It's not about this is upsetting. It seems very targeted and very much like censorship, which is very strange. I think also another one would be healthcare, a lot, and that impacts a lot of people, not just college students, not just low income adults. It affects a lot of people, and it's so we can think of America as being a place we have all these great things, and we're a first world country, and there's all these great things. People come to America to flee other areas that don't have all these resources, yet not everybody has equal resources to this kind of basic right to not be sick and to help
Mhm.
find help if you are sick. So those are probably my top three.
All really good top threes. I mean, I would say many of those are also at the core of my concerns in my heart. Um, when we look at the people that we're choosing from to, hold these positions that are going to make decisions that are really going to shape the future, how do you feel about the political candidates of today, both local and national? Anaya, I'll start with you.
I feel like we are moving in a direction that is more maybe aligning with my mindset of things, like, with just people in Congress, like, getting, like, maybe, like, more in our generation, like, getting more representation in our generation. That makes me feel better, but I think this rhetoric, it's not based on age, like, the rhetoric of, like, conservatism and things that, like, really can threaten our livelihoods as, like, Black and brown people. I don't
Mhm.
think that, like, disappears in Gen Z. So I'm still very wary. I mean, there's maybe a handful of politicians that I feel, like, connected to, but it's difficult now just because I don't feel like there's a lot of, I don't know, like, care about like care for people
Mm,
in our systems. And I just think that's also being mirrored in our government. And I don't know if one politician is going to prove to me that like they all can band together and kind of redirect this,
right.
but I don't know. I'm wary, but I am trying to be optimistic.
Yeah.
And I am seeing more representation, but it's just constantly silenced, it feels like. And
Hmm.
constantly we're having to fight the same battles on a national stage. Like I've seen so many TikToks of like black and brown congressmen and women like having to debate just the fact that they're there, like and
Right.
having these viral moments, but it's not really about policy. It's about like, oh, you told her, you really told her off, like you really did that. But it's just like racism. It's just responding to racism over and over again. And I just think that's so exhausting for us.
Mm,
And it feels like we get caught in this cycle of having to deal with that because like that's the system that we face head on, kind of, is that sort of
mhm.
like, you don't deserve to be here, so prove that first and then work on policy. But you're so busy proving that,
'Cause you're
and
not
we can't
working on
help that.
policy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not working on policy. And so
Yeah.
it just, I feel a little like I hate watching that. Like I hate watching that kind of happen over and over again. It doesn't really feel empowering to me. But
Mhm.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if that's gonna stop or not. But
Yeah.
yeah.
To that point, Robin, Vice President Kamala has been accused of kind of being trendy, right? And we've seen that a lot. Do you think that there is enough focus, to Aniya's point, on the issues at hand, and not just from her, but just from all the candidates?
Well, I think it's kind of like this double-edged sword, right? Of like you're trying to create a platform where you can be able to engage and connect with, folks that may be more inclined to listen to the ways that you communicate messages. And this is just coming from a point of view of like education in general. When you are talking with
Mhm.
a vast variety of people who are coming from different phases, different backgrounds, different learning styles, you're likely to try to adapt if you're a good teacher as well, that you try to identify how people learn and what they kind of gravitate to. And so, with that being said, with Kamala Harris's approach on certain things, I do think there are elements of what she is doing that does be able to connect and actually address what the issues are. Do I feel like sometimes, and I'm going to use the debate as an example, there are moments in the debate that I felt like, okay, instead of us pointing the finger at what, Donald Trump has done or what he plans to do or the things that he does wrong and the issues that he doesn't address as properly as she would address, let's really focus on what your intentions are. Do I feel like she could do more of that? Absolutely. And I
Mhm.
speak to really on both candidates on that aspect because I feel like sometimes your message gets lost because you are so constantly focused on other people's messages. What is your message? What are you trying to get us to listen to? But I'm also not going to downgrade her efforts and
Mhm.
the, I guess, the concept of her being more trendy and whatever her approach is, because I do think that she's still connecting with people who may not believe in what she's saying.
Recently, we heard a lot of salacious claims of my people, Haitians eating cats and dogs, and we aren't obviously the first to have been targeted. And unfortunately, the Latinx population or Latin population has been targeted a lot more than any population, I feel, especially by former President Trump. How do you feel? I guess how do you feel the other side of the camp has have they addressed enough for you on immigration to make you feel confident in who you're going to obviously choose for issues that matter around immigration?
Yeah, I think this actually has to do this. My response to this will talk directly to what she was saying just now, which is there could be more. There could be more. What would be the right word? There could just be more on what you're actually trying to do for certain
Right.
communities, rather than kind of pointing the finger. And
Hmm.
it seems like that's what's happening. And whenever we do see it, we do see some type of address, and it's been like that this whole kind of administration, you could say, where it's a give and take. So you make the border more secure, and that cuts off a lot of people from accessing resources. And then you try to make a different citizenship pathway. So it's always a give and take. And the other side, both sides have made a couple of claims, one more
Mhm.
than the other, that are very harmful, and some that actually address what the policies, like they allude to what the policies are, but they never state, neither actually states a concrete plan. So no, there is not something that either side has said that makes me, on that point, that makes me want to vote for them and makes me want to support them, because it's a hard question to answer, and it's a hard issue that it seems like both sides are actually trying to do the same thing, just different wordings around it.
Right.
Because we've seen in the last couple of months that the Democratic Party has done some things that no other Democratic Party has done, that is much more strict, which is to some a surprise to see.
Mhm.
But when we realize where we're going in politics and the way that what is winning offices, then no, you're not really surprised that the Democratic Party is choosing to move this way.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, last question, I think, because it feels like the time has just gone by so quickly. I want viewers that are watching to, obviously, I think that they've heard and understood that your thoughts, your knowledge, your values are just as important, equally as important, and you're all three, and I know your peers are well informed. I want to ask the question: what message would you like to send to the older generations about the power and the responsibility of young voters in this election? And really, what power do you guys have? Anaya, I'll start with you.
I would say, like, one of the things that you really can't beat most of the time is lived experience. And I feel like with Generation Z, like, we have grown up in the consequences of like a Trump presidency and things like that, where things just take a turn and your safety is no longer really guaranteed, like through
Mhm.
policy. So I would just say, like, listen. Like, listen when people are talking about things they've actually lived through or policy that will actually affect them when they graduate. Uh,
Robyn, what's the message young voters hold?
There's so many things that I could say, but I
Mhm.
think if we're talking about young voters in reference to the connections that could be made with older generations, I think Anaya kind of spoke a little bit to it of listening, but I also want to recognize like the trust that we should
Mhm.
have in one another because it's power in numbers, no matter where you are, no matter where you come from, how old you are. It takes a village in order to get anything successfully done and maintained, as we've seen throughout all of our history. We do have our experiences where we share what you
Yeah.
all have been through. Now,
Mhm.
granted, it looks very differently, right? No one's in the streets holding us down, but they are shooting us.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
no one's saying that we can't vote, but they are trying to have autonomy over our bodies. So
Mm.
it's like the similarities are here and we're listening and
Same
we're
issues, new
understanding and we're
tactics.
experiencing exactly. And so
Yeah.
if anything, we got to come together and we got to trust one another, both sides. Young people have to trust the old, in the wisdom, the experience that they have went through and the challenges that they have endured. But our older generation need to trust that our young people understand.
Thank you. Sarah.
I think one thing that I've noticed this election year is just, and this is, I guess, pretty specific to North Carolina, just how lawmakers are making it very inaccessible for people to vote. And as somebody who I just shared earlier, that this is my first election, there's a lot of uncertainty from young voters of how to vote. What does that look like? What does it look like to be an active member of our government? We have SNCC, we have all these different types of student organizations on college campuses that advocate, that are revolutionaries. So the political movements are there, the motivations are there, But sometimes we don't have that tradition and we don't have that guidance. I think that that's something that older generations could really help us out
Yeah.
because we've seen mobilization before. We've seen it before, and there's no reason why it can't happen again.
Thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you. Well, that concludes our time. Sara Artola, Aniya Arnold, and Robyn Magee, thank you so much. I appreciate your voices, the work that you're doing on the campuses that you're on, and I know your futures are bright, and I look forward to seeing how things succeed for you, all three. Well, that's all we have for today's show. I want to thank you for watching. If you want more content like this, we invite you to engage with us on Instagram using the hashtag Black Issues Forum. You can also find our full episodes on pbsnc.org/Black Issues Forum and on the PBS video app. I'm Kenia Thompson. I'll see you next time.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting PBS NC.